well. So I'm Tamar, and I'm the assistant principal here at Maya Note. I'm the assistant principal here at Maya Note. This is my 13th year in the school. My 7th year in the administration. Previous to my being at Maya Note, and also overlapping with my first few years here, my whole world was adult education. So to an extent in college, but mostly in adult education settings, in various federation-sponsored and other non-federation-sponsored contexts. And I just find it a real joy learning with adults in a different way than I find it a joy learning with teenagers. And part of the reason that I think it's a joy to learn with adults is that there are similar things that adults bring to the table, and so my expectation is that whatever I prepare in this series is going to be a springboard for what you have to share as well. And in many subjects, and certainly when it comes to Tanakh and to Parsha, I don't consider myself expert, I just enjoy learning it. And so I very much welcome what you have to say, whether it's adding to what I share with you, or whether it's bringing a new angle or correcting something that I share with you. Happy to do all of that. I should tell you that I leave my phone on low during almost all the time, and that I only pick it up if my kids' school calls. I just feel like I should put that out there. And the last piece that I want to say before we just jump right in, before I ask you your names and we jump right in, is that I tried to assess, just talking with Pam and Rivka Kahan and one or two other people, the extent to which the sources that I share with you should be in Hebrew and English translated or not. Those conversations made me realize I really need to ask you that question. So what I've done for this session is I've shared some of the sources in Hebrew with English translation. Some of the sources are just in English, and some of the sources are just in Hebrew. I'd love to hear from you afterwards what your preference would be, and not just based on your facility with the language, with Hebrew, but also based on whether the way that I describe what's happening in the exclusively Hebrew sources, whether that's enough, or whether you feel that the English translations would be helpful so that I can design the source packets appropriately for you moving forward. Okay? Are there any questions before I ask you your names? Any questions in general? Okay, have fun together. All right, I know some of you, I don't know others of you, so just tell me your names whether I know you or not. Hi.
Jackie Horowitz.
Jackie Horowitz, okay.
Ria Lavar.
Connie Saffron.
Arona Oring.
Rona Oring.
Steve Gelb.
Fern Amper.
Okay.
Susan Presby.
Okay.
Lena Steiner.
Okay.
Vicky Sheik.
Yes.
Phyllis Barr.
I have to just say, because I can't not say this when a teacher of sort of mine is in the room, that Maura Phyllis was my Yoni's teacher 2 years ago or 3 years ago in Ghana Viv, and I can't not acknowledge when my own or my children's teacher is in the room, so I'm very happy to have you here.
Marion Solomon.
Okay.
Marcia Eagle.
Okay, great. So, sorry, and
Ariel
yes,
Cowell.
okay, great. So if I don't know you, then you're going to remind me your names a lot today, and then I'll remember your names as we move forward. Okay, so the title of this series, I think, is something like From Mitzrayim to Mishkan. I'm very bad with titles, so Rabbi Besser came up with that for me. He is very excellent with titles, but it actually is good because this is an exciting part of the year when it comes to the Parshiot, because we really do progress from Mitzrayim, from slavery, from this slave mentality, and this culture of Bnei Israel when they don't have any singular, formal, obviously God-appointed leader, to becoming not only an independent nation, but a nation that has to learn how to be, feel commanded, be commanded, experience leadership, respond to leadership. So I'm going to try to weave themes throughout the 5 weeks that we have together. And the theme of this week is going to be commemoration and commandedness, which is to say, Parshat Bo. Parshat Bo, we have the last few of the makot, of the plagues. We have the locusts. We have leading up to Makat Bechorot. We have a lot of conversations that take place between Hashem and Moshe, between Moshe and Paro. We have the tensions of, yes, you can go, no, you can't go, you can go but leave the children, you can't go, right? We have a lot of that give and take. We have Moshe's beginning to develop as a leader and trying to understand what God is saying to him and what then to convey to Paro, and then what to convey to Bnei Israel. And then at the end of the Parsha, we have the first mitzvot in the Torah. Right? We have Korban Pesach, right, the sacrifice. We have the idea of the Peter Rechem, of dedicating the firstborn of both animals and firstborn sons to Hashem. So we have this. We end with specific mitzvot, and we'll elaborate on that also. What strikes me about Parshat Bo, and the reason that I divided the sources between commemoration and commanded, is that the psukim themselves and the communication that happens between Moshe and Paro, and then also with Bnei Israel, can really be divided into these two categories. The ways in which what we are supposed to do when we, A, read these parshiot, and B, enact this whole event, come Pesach in just a few months, a lot of it is about just commemorating events, and so much of what we do in Judaism is commemorate, remember, and in fact, not just that, but take it a step further, relive, right? The chol dor vador. We're supposed to actually try to experience emotionally what it is that Bnei Israel have experienced in the past. And then entirely separately from that, as observant Jews, as Jews for whom halacha is a central part of our lives, we're supposed to feel commanded, right? What you feel is not what's important. What you do is what's important, right? Whether you believe, how much you believe, how certain you are in your belief, how much commemoration is resonant for you on a certain day is one thing, but at the end of the day, we're commanded to do X number of things, and so we do them. Those are two sort of separate approaches, which I think we see kind of woven together here. So I want to take us through the sources, keeping that in mind, and again, hope that there will be a lot of discussion that comes out of it. Okay, so let's start off with the part that I did give you both in Hebrew and in English, which is, what I've given you is we're focusing here on the last portion of the Parsha. Today we'll be focusing on the last portion, but effectively is the last aliyah of the Parsha and the last parak Gid Gimel. So I've given you the last, took him Bet through Tet Zayin, 2 through 16, and I've underlined the portions here that really deal exclusively with commemoration, with what it means to commemorate and to have an event resonate as we're reading through it. Okay, let me read this for you, and I'll guide you to the English as well as I do this. So, Vayomer Moshe el ha'am, I'm starting from the beginning here on top. Zachor et hayom hazeh asher yatzatem miMitzrayim bibeit avadim, ki bechozek yad hotzi Hashem etchem mizeh velo yachel chametz. Right, so we have the underlying portion of the English. Remember this day, Moshe says to the people, remember this day. Here we have the beginning of the commemoration. You're commanded to remember, on which you went free from Egypt, the house of bondage, how God freed you from it with a mighty hand. No leavened bread shall be eaten. Okay, the next part that we have here is in bold, and we're going to come back to this bold part later, which is why I emphasized it. So a few psukim later, Va'avadeta et ha'avodah hazot b'chodesh hazeh, right? So you should observe in this month, what practice are they supposed to observe? Shivat yamim tochal matzot, uv'yom hashvi'i chag la'Hashem. Oops, I really thought I needed all these not. So this actually should go in Shemot. I'm sorry, I did not change that one. מצות יאכל את 7 הימים ולא יראה לך חמץ ולא יראה לך שאור בכל גבולך והגדת לבנך ביום ההוא לאמור בעבור זה עשה השם לי בצאתי ממצרים. So here what we have is a little bit of a bridge between the commemoration and the action, right? In other words, because you are commanded to remember this, here's the ritual that is associated with that, right? 7 days, you should not eat unleavened bread, no leavened bread shall be found with you. And how does that bold part end?
But you got
Right, in other words, we come back to the story, right? We have the story, we have what we're supposed to remember, we have the command, really the central command of this time of year, in a few months' time of year, not eating chametz, only eating matzot, and not only is this once again remembered, please remember now, so that you remember what I did, but also so that you can make sure that future generations understand that it's grounded in memory as well, in commemoration as well. The next pasuk goes toward another kind of angle on remembering. והיה לך לאות על ידך ולזיכרון בין עיניך למען תהיה תורת השם בפיך כי ביד חזקה הוציאך השם ממצרים. I'm not doing a good job with this. Okay. The underlined part, this shall serve you as a sign on your hand, as a reminder on your forehead. Again, we're talking about fill-in here. But again, for the ritual combined with the commemoration. Always to remember, never to forget. And then in the last piece of it, we come back to your children. והיה כי ישאלך בנך מחר לאמור מה זאת ואמרת אליו בחוזק יד הוציאנו השם מארץ מצרים מבית עבדים. And on the very end, the very last piece, והיה לאות על ידך ולטוטפות בין עיניך. כי בחוזק יד הוציאנו השם ממצרים. So we're emphasizing the tefillin, the commemoration, back to Mitzrayim. So they're all woven together. Next week, when we learn Parshat Beshalach together, we're going to talk a little bit more about this phrase bechozek yad, because particularly in Parshat Beshalach, the symbol of a hand becomes critically important. The action and the symbol associated with hands, strong hands, Hashem's hand, Moshe's hand, become incredibly important to understanding the messages that are being given. But they start here. So what you have here is psukim that really weave together the ritual, the commemoration, and we know already from the Haggadah, we know from Pesach, and let's be honest, we know from the whole Jewish calendar and what we're expected to do throughout the year, and not just the mitzvot that are d'oraita, that originate with the Torah, but mitzvot that are d'Rabbanan also, chagim that are d'Rabbanan, that they are, that commemoration is in some ways what we're all about. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but when I have had conversations with friends or acquaintances, or in some cases family members, who struggle with what it means to observe ritual and really keep up with the Jewish calendar and the Jewish and halacha and what it means to kind of be observant, often what they say is, it's always about the past, it's always about memory, it's always about reliving what's difficult. And so that can there are people who have a struggle with that, and there are obviously other angles to look at, other ways of looking at that, and I think that what the Torah is saying is, this is what grounds us, this is what roots us as Jews, the fact that we always have this to look back to, and that it reminds us of what God is. I think that's the important piece here, and that's going to be the bridge between the commemoration and feeling commanded, right? That, in other words, if you have a good sense of memory, if you have a good sense of how memory is not just in the past but is still current, then feeling commanded can be much more richer and can sort of motivate us toward action. Yeah, Mina?
And memory, it's tied up with continuum. Like we have the Masorah, I mean, that's what memory is about too. It goes all the way back. And
Right.
That's
Right.
Matan Torah.
Right, exactly. It's very true. Our whole Masorah is based on the
On the
idea.
idea of memory, and
Right.
the idea of connecting to the past.
Right, exactly. I think that's a very good point. I have that. It's funny. I have that concept of Masorah on my mind a little bit because I just wrote an article, which you'll see in about a week and a half. For the Jewish Link is starting a chinuch column, so they're asking administrators in different schools to. So I wrote a piece about questions that students have about fundamentals of belief and doubts and how we can go about addressing them. And one of the questions that often comes up for students, a variation on this question, if not this exact question, is how do we know that there are no weak links in the Masorah? And so part of that is, there are many ways of addressing that question, but part of that is about the inherent value of Masorah and memory, right? And how Masorah together with memory kind of carries us forward, although the question is still very, I think, a relevant one for many people. Yes?
What occurs to me
Sorry.
about the English
Yes.
word is memory is only past, but common memory is, that's always
Yes.
with together.
Great.
That's with past.
Great. So I love that you're saying that because source 3 is going to speak directly to that. So great, you anticipated something that we're going to talk about in a moment. Source here. Hi. What's your name?
Sarah Barber.
Hi. Nice to meet you. We're starting with our second source right now. So let's look at the Sefer HaChinuch. The Sefer HaChinuch, as you may know, was written in 13th century Spain by an anonymous author who has categorized all the mitzvot in the Torah according to Maimonides, Rambam's enumeration. So Rambam was was one of the most important enumerators of all the mitzvot. So, but his is not the only way to number them, but the author of Sefer HaChinuch took Rambam's enumeration, and in a way that's, I find, incredibly accessible. Sefer HaChinuch is one of my favorite bar mitzvah gifts, actually, because it has a language, a kind of Hebrew that is very accessible, and really goes into a lot of interesting detail about not just how to observe each mitzvah, but the core value, the core understanding, what its meaning is. So let's look at a few mitzvot here. Sefer HaChinuch, I've listed mitzvot Hey, Tet, and Yud. So we're talking about, starting from almost the very beginning, the 5th mitzvah in the Torah, the 9th mitzvah in the Torah, and the 10th mitzvah in the Torah. Okay, so for the 5th one is mitzvat shchitat HaPesach. So here's where I did not use English. I'll make sure to translate well here. Mitzvat shchitat HaPesach. What does shchitat HaPesach mean?
The slaughtering.
The actual slaughtering, exactly. Yeah, and the mitzvah of the actual slaughtering of the Pesach. And so he starts off with Lishchot b'yom 14 b'Nisan ben harbaim. So he goes into the details of what it means. Take on the 14th day of Nisan, and in that later part of the afternoon, what to take. V'zeh nikra korban Pesach. And this is the korban Pesach, right? This mitzvah in the Torah. And then on the second line, ועניין המצווה הוא שמתקבצים אנשים מישראל לחבורות ולוקחים מן השוק ומביתם גדי אחד. So people come in large groups from Bnei Israel. They come from the Israelites, right? They come together and they practice this ritual. They take this animal, shochtin oto, and then the last line here I think is important. Mishorashei mitzvah zo, and this is how Sefer HaChinuch, the author of Sefer HaChinuch, ends his mitzvah, his description. What are the roots of this mitzvah? Mishorashei mitzvah zo, כדי שיזכרו היהודים לעולם, הניסים הגדולים שעשה להם השם יתברך ביציאת מצרים. Anyone want to help me with that? What's the root of the mitzvah according to that?
To commemorate the nisim, the great nisim that Hashem did for Bnei Israel when they left Mitzrayim.
So to commemorate it, and I'm sorry, can you remind me? Can you remind me your first name?
Oh, Arona.
Arona, what did you add to that?
No, I thought that the word sheyiskaru was
Yes.
the
They'll
key
remember.
word.
Right, but it says ki yizkeru ha'odim la'olam. So here you have another piece, le'olam, forever and ever, right? In other words, it's not just that they'll remember, but this memory, as we said before, is supposed to move forward. It's not just about thinking what happened, but it's supposed to follow us forever. Excuse me. And obviously we're not in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, so we can't do this mitzvah. But this mitzvah, this ritual slaughter, in theory, and say God willing in the future, either this or a variation on it, however things will work themselves out, is supposed to always bring us back to that place. Mitzvah Tet, the 9th mitzvah, mitzvah hashbatat hachametz. So the mitzvah of getting rid of, hashbata is to get rid of all the chametz. So lehasir kol lechem chametz mi mishkenotenu b'yom 14 b'Nisan, to get rid of all the chametz from within our households. Mishkenotenu is our living quarters. On the 14th day, mishorashei mitzvah zo kedei shenizkor hanisim b'Mitzrayim, kmo shekatuv b'korban Pesach. Right? It's going to refer back to korban Pesach. Let's remember all the miracles, just like korban Pesach. Mitzvah Yud. The 10th mitzvah, mitzvah achilat matzah. So, lechol lechem matzah v'leil 15 b'Nisan, and then he goes into a little bit of detail. It has to be dagan, made of wheat, and little sources. And at the end, mishorashei mitzvah zo, ma shekatuv b'korban Pesach. So Sefer HaChinuch in the 13th century categorizes all these different specifics under korban Pesach, whose root is bring that memory forth with you forward, le'olam, forevermore. That will never not be an important part of who you are and how you identify. Okay? So this is a halachic book that has a kind of a reflection of what we saw in the first of the psukim in the Torah. Now this is what Barbara, right? Barbara, yeah. This is what, I'm sorry, I used to call you Mrs. Shapiro. Mrs. Shapiro's daughter and I went to school together many years ago. This is what I think Barbara was referring to before this next pasuk. So this next source. Yael Zerubbabel, has anyone ever heard of her? She's great. She actually was a professor of mine many years ago in college. She's now she's at Rutgers in the Jewish Studies department, and she's a professor of Hebrew literature. And she wrote a book called Recovered Roots, Collective Memory and the Making of Israeli National Tradition, in which she takes three events or tropes, in some cases events, in cases tropes, in Jewish history, and carries them forward so that she looks at them through the literary lens, and really writes about how Israeli national tradition was created by the ways in which these tropes have been manifest. So this is from her introduction. I'm happy not to read this. Anyone want to read for us? Or someone else will read? Every group.
Every group develops a memory of its own past that highlights its unique identity vis-a-vis other groups. These reconstructed images provide the group with an account of its origin and development and thus allow it to recognize itself through time. Although collective memory is carried by individuals, it expands beyond their autobiographical memory, as it relies on the transmission of knowledge from one generation to another. A wide range of formal and informal commemorations fuels the vitality of collective memory. Holiday celebrations, festivals, monuments, memorials, songs, stories, plays, educational texts continue to compete with scholarly appraisals of the past in constructing collective memory.
Okay, good. So I really love this quote. I actually use it a lot. I use it whenever I can, and in shiurim about Pesach that I give, that time of the year I'm often asked to give in school, outside of school shiurim. I really think it's one of these things where, someone has said, it's off to a stop, but ne'er so well expressed to me, this is that. That the idea that collective memory, especially the last line here, and the reason I included that last line is because as someone who my own background is actually primarily in history, to me this is so important to recognize that collective memory and the way in which we manifest it, the way in which we play act it sometimes, the way in which the rituals support collective memory, as she says, compete with scholarly appraisals of the past. In other words, you could say that the best research, the best understanding of Semitic languages, if it's Tanakh you're trying to understand better, or what the Hittites did, right? That the best understanding of the social context of the Tanaim is going to result in the most accurate understanding of what to do and how to do. And yet, as human beings, as people who have emotional connections to our nation, to our identity, to our past, to what it means to be observant, collective memory is always going to compete very, very strongly with the value of scholarly appraisal, because collective memory forms identity in a way that scholarly appraisals and scholarly texts can't always do that. And if you think about what's happening here at the time of Yetziat Mitzrayim and all these rituals that are associated with it, it's the formation of a new nation. I mean, a pretty bold, kind of audacious thing that only God could really do, right? Take a nation that hasn't really been a nation, take a group of people that hasn't really been a nation, and say, with a bunch of miracles that are kind of outlandish, right? Locusts falling from the sky and the river turning red, and 600,000, men, leaving at once, and a sea that may or may not split once I step into it. It's sort of like the idea that a bunch of people would believe it is really, kind of mystical. It's the stuff of fantasy, and yet it's it becomes part of how we understand ourselves in later times, right? So the rituals are supposed to, from the start, not just us le'olam moving forward, but from the start, the rituals are supposed to start creating memory in that moment. So it's another lens on memory that we have here. Not just we in 2017 carrying forward what happened thousands of years ago, but in that moment of the Exodus, in that moment of the leaving, memory is being created. Rituals through memory are being created. Identity, that means, is being formed. And that's what I think is so beautiful about this.
Can I give an example of something that comes to my mind?
Please.
In Megillat HaAtzmaut, the Declaration of Independence of Israel,
Yes.
starts with the words, Be'eretz Yisrael kam Am HaYehudi.
Yes.
In the land of Israel, the Jewish people was created. And we know that it's not a fact, because we were created as a nation in the desert.
Absolutely.
Hayom niyata le'am, we were told in the desert. But they wanted to create that collective memory to give the strength to the land of Israel. So now everybody refers to it as, where was the Jewish nation created? In Israel.
Right. It's beautiful. I love that. That's such a great example, because It's such a great example, I can't even add to it. It's a perfect example, I
Zionist
think, of what it means to
Anti-
have a memory take priority over even over fact. Because that helps us form our identity. And by the way, Zionism, which is it is just the history of Zionism, is rich, right, with the importance of memory. Is rich with the transformation of a holiday from having one meaning into having a totally different meaning. Tu B'Shvat, Hanukkah are just our two examples of that, where something that's about the recapturing of the Beit HaMikdash becomes about the Zionist enterprise and independence. And yes, Hanukkah in history is about independence. It is about a short period of time. 2,000 plus years ago when Jews had their independence. But that's a whole different story than Zionism. And Zionists, I won't say co-opted because that sounds negative, but in a positive way, co-opted, Hanukkah, the way in which Tu B'Shvat has become about Medinat Yisrael and not just Eretz Yisrael. I mean, Zionism is full of this, so it's really a perfect example of how memory becomes so critical. And the words that we choose, by the way.
So I just add a small thing,
Please.
because I agree with you, this is so rich, this is so short, it's so rich.
Yeah.
To me, what stood out is the importance of the individual and the importance of the community, right? Without the community, there is no collective memory. However, without the individual passing it forward, that collective memory falls apart.
That's great.
So the community is important, but the individual is important. We're
That's
never alone, but if it was only community, then it wouldn't work either.
That's great. Thank you for adding that. And I think you'll be able to think about that in even greater detail when we get to the second part, which is commandedness. Because feeling commanded, in some respects, this is about just, I do my job. But in other respects, what comes out particularly about the ritual surrounding Pesach is that being commanded relies on the individual considering him or herself part of the community. So we'll get to that very soon. Anything else before we move on? Okay. So the next piece is again Sefer HaChinuch, but moving to the 21st mitzvah in the Torah, which of course is mitzvat Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, the actual telling of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Okay. So I'm going to just do the underlined piece right now, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happens at the end, because this last paragraph here on the page is actually about 3 or 4 times as long as it is. And I showed it to you so that I can tell you about it rather than look inside. Let's look at the underlined piece. So again, let's just take one step back first. There are 2 mitzvot associated with, in Hebrew, there are 2 formulations of the mitzvah of telling about Yetziat Mitzrayim. One is Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, Sipur from the word story, and the other is Zechirat. Like remembering it, and they are considered 2 separate mitzvot, according to Rambam's enumeration and other people's enumeration of the mitzvot. Let's keep that in mind as we look at this. Inyan ha-mitzvah, right? Let's restart the core of the mitzvah. שיזכור הניסים והעניינים שאירעו לאבותינו בארץ מצרים. Right, to remember the miracles and the things that happened to our forefathers in Yetziat Mitzrayim, ואיך לקח הקהל יתברך נקמתנו מהם, and how Hashem avenged us, ואפילו בינו לבין עצמו. אם אין שם אחרים, חייב להוציא הדברים מפיו, כדי שיתעורר ליבו בדבר. כי בדיבור יתעורר הלב. So here Sefer HaChinuch introduces something very interesting. Let's say I'm alone at the time of Pesach. I don't have a Seder to go to. I'm on an Arctic mission. What do I still have to do? I'm sorry? Yeah. I have to say it out loud. I can't just think it. I have to say it out loud. Because ki b'dibur yit'orer halev. So here, this is, I think, so important to our concept of commemoration, and where commemoration is supposed to lead to feeling. And this, I think, is a challenging thing about Pesach, and a challenging thing about the concept of b'chol dor v'dor. That I'm supposed to actually feel something, and commanding someone to feel something is a little outlandish on some level, right? I mean, think about how much some of us struggle on Tisha B'Av, where we don't have an episodic memory of a Beit HaMikdash. So we try to bring other things into it, right? We try to think of the challenges of modern Judaism and the threats that we have, or we try to, or for some people it's the Shoah. For some people it becomes intensely personal, that the way that they can get to feeling loss is by thinking about actual personal loss in their lives, because it can be so hard to be commanded to feel something historical that we never experienced. And here what they're saying is, so one way that we can actually start to emote, to feel emotion, is to say something out loud. So even if no one else can hear you, the mitzvah of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, of this particular mitzvah, involves talking out loud. I want to add to this that the Minchat Chinuch, which is a commentary on the Sefer HaChinuch, cites Achronim, later century scholars, rabbis, who indicate that what they call hirhurim, which are thoughts or contemplations, they actually are sufficient to fulfill the Zechirat Yetziat Mitzrayim, which is actually a daily mitzvah. In Shema, in other tefillot, right? The mitzvah of Zechirat, sort of mentioning, remembering Yetziat Mitzrayim, that they say that fulfilling that mitzvah is enough. You can do that by thinking about it. But Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim actually is Vesaper, to say it out loud. That's Pesach, okay? To evoke those emotions. Okay, I'm going to go on the underlined part. Mishorashei mitzvah zo. This is where we always get to. Ma shekatuv bekorban Pesach, right? Same thing. It's all about korban Pesach. Ve'en min hatema in ba'u lanu mitzvot rabot al ze. מצוות תעשה ומצוות לא תעשה, כי הוא יסוד גדול ועמוד חזק בתורתנו ובאמונתנו. So what they're here, Sefer HaChinuch is acknowledging, I know that I keep saying that this is about Korban, this is the same as Korban Pesach, but en min hatema, don't worry about that. It's not such a big question. How can it be that there are so many mitzvot associated with this one thing, both mitzvot aseh and mitzvot lo ta'aseh, because it is such a big and deep foundation. This idea of commemoration and remembering and the belief and identity that's associated with it is such an important foundation of our Torah and of our emunatenu, of our beliefs, that it warrants that many mitzvot about exactly that are correlated with the one same general concept. Here he's acknowledging what he hasn't acknowledged yet. Okay. Anything else before we move on? So why did I gave you just a little taste of what I'm telling you is about 4 times as long on the bottom, because in order to sort of support what he just said, he actually goes into the entire every single ritual associated with Pesach, with the Seder right here. And just so you can see a taste of it, Dinei HaMitzvah, כגון הסדר שחייבים ישראל לעשות בלילה הזה בעניין סעודתם והכוסות של יין שחייבים לשתות ושיעורם, not just the kosot, not just the cups of wine, but exactly the amounts, the measure of each cup, umezigatan, how to pour them, v'siduran, and their order, betchila mevin mayim v'notlim yad. So, and this goes on and on and on in great detail if you look at the Sefer HaChinuch about every mitzvah. And so, this is going to be, again, the beginning of a bridge to commandedness, because he's really associating how every single piece of ritual here, just in the Seder alone, let alone actually saying the words out loud, exist to support this idea of remembering and acknowledging. Okay, so that's our Sefer HaChinuch. Let's move on to the next source right now. Actually, I just remembered there's something that I wanted to share with you at this point that I did not give you in a source. Has anyone ever seen Rav Rimon's Haggadah? Beautiful, beautiful. It's really my favorite Haggadah that I've seen over the years. Rav Rimon is important rabbi who has a whole center for understanding halakha and understanding Judaism and educational texts. He put out a Haggadah a few years ago. I want to say that I first saw it 3 or 4 years ago. It's stunning, and when I say stunning, I don't only mean visually. What I mean is that in this Haggadah, the interaction between how things are organized and in some cases even illuminated, and the accessibility of it within the Seder is unusual. Meaning, I often see a Haggadah and it has so much in it that I feel like in order for me to utilize it during the Seder, I have to stop the Seder and just focus on myself for 15 minutes. here there's a way in which it can become very well integrated into the Seder, just looking it over a little bit beforehand. So Rav Rimon has a 2-page spread in his Haggadah devoted to the question of why it is that we don't say a bracha on the Seder. We say a bracha on most things, and certainly on mitzvot. And the Seder is about Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, which is a bracha. We say bracha on many things during the Seder, but not on the Seder. So the answer that I want to share with you, he gives about 5 different answers, by the way, from different Rishonim and Achronim. The answer that I want to share with you here is, I think, most relevant to what we're talking about, which is the answer of the Maharal of Prague, 16th century, very important scholar. And what the Maharal says is that the essence of the Seder is emotion. It's a mitzvah of the heart, that's how he words it. The Seder is a mitzvah of the heart. And we don't have brachot about how we feel. We only have brachot about what we do. Okay? So, right? It's about putting the food into your mouth. See, even the kosot, the yain, the tilat. Think of any bracha that we do that's associated with a mitzvah. It's about action. The Maharal states very clearly that the Seder, begadol, writ large, the Seder is about the heart, is about emotion. And there's no brachot for emotion. It's an interesting idea, right? I'm not saying it's the only answer, but it's an answer that really spoke to me as I thought through this question of what it means to feel, to be commanded to feel. Hard to come up with a bracha for that, since we don't have a tradition of brachot for that. Okay. Let's look at Yair Khan. Yair Khan is a rabbi at Gush, and he has an interesting reflection on this. Okay, source 5. Can someone read source 5 for me? Again, I have to read the English ones. Ariel, would you go ahead?
The goal of transplanting the redemption of the past into the living present from the pages of history books into our national consciousness forms the central pillar of the mitzvah of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. We eat bitter herbs in order to actually taste the suffering of bondage so that we too cry and pray to the Almighty. Following all of our longings for even a respite from the bondage, the complete redemption comes suddenly and instantaneously. Even our dough had no chance to rise, which is illustrated by the matzah. Thus, the uniqueness of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim at the Seder lies in the attempt to reconstruct, revive, and actually relive the religious national experience of the Exodus itself.
Okay. So this really, in some ways, repeats and elaborates on what Yael Zerubbabel said, the concepts that we've seen in Sefer HaChinuch, right? That's what I told you about the Maharal, this idea of reliving and reenacting. And it goes very beautifully into this small selection of the Tosefta that I shared with you here. In that what's going to happen in this Tosefta is that you're going to see the ways in which the Tanaim, people who lived at the time of the Mishnah, in some cases, people in the people who wrote for the Tosefta is supplemental to the Mishnah, and the rabbis who appear in the Tosefta are often the same Tanaim who appear in the Mishnah. In some cases, Tosefta is identical to Mishnah. In some cases, it just wasn't included in the Mishnah, but is considered to have traditional and halachic importance for us. So you'll see the ways in which the Tanaim were trying to set up the Seder, or at least contemplating how the Seder could do exactly what Rav Khan is saying, which is enable us to reconstruct, revive, and relive. So here's what they say. The Tosefta here is talking about, the Tanaim here are talking about at what point we say Hallel, at what time and at what point we say Hallel during the Seder, so that it can potentially happen at the time on the clock when Yetziat Mitzrayim really took place. Okay? So if you look at the underline, I'm only going to look at the underline part. Beit Shammai omrim ad em havanim smecha, v'Beit Hillel omrim ad chalabi shlevayin ovayin v'chotem begeula. So they're discussing. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. There's a whole antecedent to this. We're not going to look at it. They talk about until what point we say Hallel, when we stop, and then. It says here, v'chotem begeula, and you end off with the part of Hallel that has to do with actual redemption, or the part of the Seder that has to do with actual redemption. Ubeit Hillel v'chi kvar yatz'u shemazkirim yetziat Mitzrayim. So they're saying, wait a minute, at this point of the Seder, when we say Hallel, the point at which you'll get to Hallel, given when you start your Seder, I don't know, let's say that's 12 o'clock at night. At that point, did Bnei Israel actually leave Mitzrayim? Or did they leave at 12 o'clock at night from Mitzrayim? אמרו להם בית הלל, אפילו הוא ממתין עד קריאת הגבר, הרי אלו לא יצאו עד 6 שעות ביום. האח אומרת הגאולה, ועדיין לא נגאלו. So here's what Beit Hillel say. You know what? Even if you waited until the rooster calls, even if Kriyat HaGever is the call of the rooster, even if you waited until, 4 or 5 in the morning, you're still not going to be at the point at which Bnei Israel left Mitzrayim, because Bnei Israel left Mitzrayim 6 sha'ot bayom. They left 6 hours, 6 halachic hours, 6 hours into the day. So the question that they leave off with, so how can we talk about Geulah when they haven't actually yet been redeemed? And then it goes on and on to try to understand how we could talk about it regardless. But I'm sharing this with you to show you that the Tanaim here were trying to do exactly what Rav Kahn centuries later said we were supposed to do, which is, in that moment, not just understand it, but relive it. And if we're going to relive it, we should try as close as possible to go through those same actions that Bnei Israel did. We can't actually leave Mitzrayim, but we can talk about Geulah at the moment of Geulah. We can talk about redemption at the moment of redemption. So they were struggling here with how to make the Seder and the rituals associated with evoke emotions by having them happen in the moment, through the reliving. It's kind of a beautiful thing to think about how they thought about this, and not just the ways in which we may be imposing our own sense of what it means to remember on them. They were contemplating how is memory best evoked? How is memory and feeling? And therefore, we're about to talk about devotion to Hashem best evoked. Okay? Okay. So we're going to shift gears now to commandedness, which is, of course, the other part of this, which we've implied all along by looking at the Sefer HaChinuch. It is, after all, about mitzvot. We're going to shift gears, and we're going to start with looking at Rav Michael Hatin, who also is a rabbi who's B'nai Gush, and, excuse me, he is going to lead us directly into Ramban. Okay, so I want to read that part, source number 7. Out loud. Yeah, Hani?
How many of us are able to associate the saga of the Exodus with its more fundamental goal of describing God's relationship to the world, His power, His knowledge, and His involvement? No wonder that the Ramban concludes that in order truly to perform the mitzvah of mezuzah, or any other mitzvah act for that matter, one must perform it consciously. To perform even the minor mitzvah consciously is to transform it from a trivial ritual act into a dramatic commemorative event that can very well transform our lives and remake our relationship with God.
Okay. So what Rav Hatim does here, right, is he talks about ritual. He talks about commemoration on some level, but really he's talking about 2 things that we haven't yet addressed here. One is kavana, what we call kavana, right? Performing a ritual consciously, performing a mitzvah consciously. And the other is, we haven't really talked about a relationship with God yet. We've talked about memory, we've talked about national identity. But commandedness presumes a relationship with God. What that relationship looks like is, if we have, 15 people in this room, it's going to probably look 15 different ways. But it presumes a relationship with God on some level. So let's look at Ramban. This is the Ramban that source number 7 referred to. Okay, Ramban, 13th century Spain. So the same century as, and culture, by the way, is Sefer HaChinuch, but Ramban, a very well-known Rishon. Okay, so this, by the way, just to refer you back to the first sources that we had, we're now on the Ramban on the Totafot B'nei Necha, right? So he's talking about tefillin, the pasuk that we read, or one of the pasuk we read earlier on tefillin. Okay, בעבור כי הקדוש ברוך הוא לא יעשה אות ומופת בכל דור לעיני כל רשע או כופר, יצווה אותנו שנעשה תמיד זיכרון באות לאשר ראו עינינו, ונעתיק הדבר אל בנינו ובניהם ולבניהם ובניהם לדור אחרון. Okay, so בעבור, because Hashem doesn't make grand miracles and signs to every generation, right? We have this tradition that not every generation is deserving of such things. So in place of that, we've been commanded to have this sign, right? This sign. Men have been commanded to have this sign between our eyes, and this idea that we should transmit it further down the generations, because we can't rely on Hashem to perform these miracles over and over again in an obvious way, so that we'll all be as astounded and blown away as Bnei Israel were by such grand events. I'm now at the end of the second line. Excuse me. והחמיר מאוד בעניין הזה, כמו שחייב, excuse me, כמו שחייב כרת באכילת מצה ובעזיבת הפסח. And there's a real chumrah associated with this, meaning chumrah meaning a stringency. So it's not just that it's commanded, but here we're getting to like real commandedness, because what's the punishment for eating chametz? Karet. It's one of the most serious punishments that you can get. So this isn't just, please try to remember, this is a serious form of commandedness associated with it. And I'm going down to the next set of underlined lines. כי הקונה מזוזה בזוז אחד וקבעה בפתחו ונתכוון בעניינה, כבר הודה בחידוש העולם ובדיעת הבורא והשגחתו וגם בנבואה, והאמין בכל פינות התורה, מלבד שהודה שחסד הבורא גדול מאוד על עושה רצונו, שיוציאנו מאותו עבדות לחירות. Now here Ramban is transitioning from talking about tefillin to talking about mezuzah, because that's also very relevant here. And here he's talking about the kavanah piece, right? What Rav Hatim called consciousness in Hebrew, kavanah, right? Someone who buys a mezuzah for one zuz and kavah and puts it on his doorpost. In doing so, v'nitkaven b'inyana. This is the important word here. I skipped it. V'nitkaven b'inyana doesn't just do it, but does it with intention. Does it consciously. What does that accomplish? Kvar hoda b'chidush ha'olam. Understands everything that's listed here. The hashgacha of Hashem, the nivuah. In putting a mezuzah up consciously, you're acknowledging prophecy. You're acknowledging God's presence. You're acknowledging God's hashgacha, oversight. Ve'emin b'chol pinot haTorah. You're acknowledging every corner of the Torah. You're acknowledging belief. It indicates belief in every aspect of the Torah. And so on. And it ends with שהוציאנו מלבד שהודה שהחסד הבורא גדול מאוד על עושה רצונו, and also that you recognize that Hashem has chesed for people who do His will, who accomplish His will, שהוציאנו מאותו עבדות לחירות, because why else would Hashem have taken us out from slavery into freedom? All that you can accomplish by putting your mezuzah up, by buying mezuzah for one zuz, putting it up, and doing it consciously, having that consciousness of what it means to be commanded, right? So to understand that ritual is something that we do. On some level, I'm shifting gears here, not because it evokes emotion, but because God told us to do it. So we're coming at it from a different angle. If we do it with intention to perform a mitzvah, then we are, just by virtue of that, acknowledging everything that Tzipor Yetziat Mitzrayim is supposed to acknowledge in us, right? So there's that commandedness that that's incredibly potent if we follow it, according to how Ramban articulates it. And now the last two lines, ולפיכך אמרו, הרי הווה זהיר במצווה קלה כחמורה. So you should be careful with an easy, what seems to be a casual mitzvah, as much as with what appears to be a very serious one. שכולן חמודות וחביבות מאוד. שבכל שעה אדם מודה בהן לאלוקיו, וכוונת כל המצווה, שנאמין באלוהינו ונודה אליו שהוא בוראנו, והיא כוונת היצירה. So every mitzvah has equal importance, whether it just seems like, okay, I'm saying my mizonot, or whether it's that I'm performing the Seder, or not eating chametz on Pesach, because they are all chamudot v'chavivot. What do those words mean, chamudot v'chavivot? Beloved, exactly. Those words mean beloved. Those words are about the heart. Chamud, chemda, chaviv, chaviva. Those words are about closeness and feeling. So they are all equally close. They all mean as much as each other. Each one means as much as the other to Hashem, right? To Hashem, and therefore it should be that way to us. And because every time that a person acknowledges that, שבכל שעה אדם מודה בהן לאלוקיו, but in every time that you perform one of these, what are you essentially doing? מודה בהן. Through them we're acknowledging, מודה, acknowledging, not this, in this case it doesn't mean thank, just to make sure we understand that. מודה is להודות, as in to acknowledge, acknowledging God, and acknowledging, and the kavanat kol mitzvah, the intention of every mitzvah is that we believe in God. And v'nodeh elav, here it actually might mean, for nodeh in this case, I'm not exactly sure, but I think it might here mean thank. But either thank or acknowledge that He is our Creator, and v'hi kavanat yitzira, and let's take it to a wider lens. That's the whole purpose of creation. We're getting back to Briat Ha'olam here, right? The whole purpose of creation comes back to God and feeling commanded. So here we have the mitzvot that come directly from Yetziat Mitzrayim, Tzipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. And if we do them consciously, and if we do them with an understanding of what mitzvahs are supposed to accomplish, then what we're accomplishing similar things to Tzipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, to commemoration, but we're doing it through the lens, through the angle, through the power of ritual, of mitzvah, of understanding what commandedness is about. So they really work together on some level, memory and mitzvah. Okay, I'd like to look now, so I'm going to have to keep this quickly and right on time, at the Ibn Ezra. Okay. So, get my notes here. Okay. Ibn Ezra lived about a century before Rambam, also 12th century, also Spain in the 12th century, very important Rishon, very important commentator. Okay, so let me just give you a background on what's happening here. He's going to refer to a person named Ibn Jana, who was a Spanish-Jewish grammarian. Okay, and we're looking. This is going to be a little bit complicated on a grammatical level, but I think on a Hebrew grammatical level. But I think it's interesting enough that we're going to try to tackle this. You'll tell me if I haven't made it clear enough. If you look back to the first source that we have. Pasuk Ched, and I did not give it to you pasuk by pasuk, so I'm going to refer you to it. Pasuk Ched is where it says Ba'avur zeh. Ba'avur zeh asa Hashem li. I think I would have numbered the second, right? Okay, here it is. The last. I told you we were coming back to the bold. That's why. The last of the bold lines. Okay, so. Right before that line, the end of the previous line, so you will tell your children on that day saying, what does ba'avur zeh mean?
Because of this, maybe?
For the sake of this, because of this, for this reason. So in English we have kind of general, casual ways of translating it. Not so simple from a Hebrew grammatical perspective, especially if you're not a very medactic grammarian in 12th century Spain. So here's what Ibn Ezra is going to tell us. Back to Ibn Ezra. Amar Rabbi Marinum, Perush ba'avur zeh. So here he's referring to Ibn Jana. Haya ra'ui lihoto hefech ze ba'avur she'asa Hashem li. So what Ibn Jana said is, it should have been the opposite, really. If you want to understand what the Torah is saying, it should have been ze being the mitzvot of matzah and chametz. That is, why do I have them? Ba'avur she'asa Hashem li. I have these mitzvot, I'm commanded to observe these mitzvot because of what Hashem did. So here's the action, Yetziat Mitzrayim, major miracles, and so therefore I'm supposed to observe it. That's what Ibn Jana says, and he says if only the Torah would have worded it that way, it would have been clearer. Not so says Ibn Ezra. He disagrees. And I'm going on to the next underlined piece. Ein anu ochlim matzot ba'avur zeh. We don't eat matzah because of the fact that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. Rak piresh ba'avur zeh, ba'avur zot ha'avodah shehu achilat matzah velo yachel matzah, shehu tchilat hamitzvot shetzivah lanu Hashem. Asa lanu Hashem otot, עד שהוציאנו ממצרים, והתה אנו לא הוציאנו ממצרים רק לעובדו. I'm going to help you with this, because this is where Ibn Ezra gets very complicated. What Ibn Ezra is saying is that it's fine what Ibn Jana is saying, but it's actually not loyal to the text. Loyal to the text is, we were taken out of Egypt. Why? Why are we taken out of Egypt in the first place? In order to observe the mitzvot. It's not that we were taken out of Egypt and therefore we should observe the mitzvot. The whole purpose of Yetziat Mitzrayim was for us to become a mitzvah observant nation. Ba'avur zeh asa Hashem lanu. The entire premise of Yetziat Mitzrayim, we're not doing mitzvot just to thank Hashem. That's another way of wording it, right? Ibn Jana would say, you're happy that Hashem took you out of Mitzrayim, B'nai Israel? In commemoration of that, let's do what B'nai Israel did back in Mitzrayim. No, it's that the achilat matzah, not eating chametz, telling the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, it's almost like that was all predestined. The whole reason to take us out of Mitzrayim was so that we could become a nation of people for whom mitzvah, feeling commanded, is at our core. It's not a thankfulness. It's not just commemoration. And that's part of why I'm calling this commandedness, right? It's no longer is it just commemoration. It's that the essence, part of the essence of what it means to be a Jewish nation is to feel commanded. That's what it means. Honey.
It's kind of like a biconditional in terms of math.
Yes.
Depending how you look at it.
Yes.
It's that statement you couldn't.
Exactly, and exactly. One of the few things that I actually remember from math and from logic. So yeah, it's definitely true, but I'm going to bring it back to my court here, since that's about all I do remember, is that in Hebrew grammar, we're talking about the difference between ba'avur zeh and biglal zeh, right? In other words, because is a bit of a tricky word. I'm sorry, ba'avu is a bit of a tricky phrase. Biglal means because of this. And what Ibn Ezra is saying is, no, ba'avur zeh is actually the right word. It's for the sake of performing mitzvot, we were taken out of Egypt. Not we perform mitzvot, biglal, because we were taken out of Egypt. Do you see the difference? I think it's a critical difference. Whether or not you are the commemoration is meaningful to me, or one is more of the ritual is meaningful to me. Even Ezra's insight here, I think, is a beautiful insight in the way he's trying to understand the Torah at its face value, and what it's trying to say here.
Biglal is because of, and ba'avur is so in order to us to do the mitzvah.
Right, exactly. That's a good. I think that's a good. Certainly the way even Ezra's explaining it, and I think also in Hebrew, I think that's a good English distinction. Yes. Okay.
Biglal would be more commemoration, and ba'avur would be more commandment.
Exactly. In this formulation, yes, exactly right. Okay. I want to end with getting to something that's a little bit different when it comes to commanded. We were supposed to end about 3 minutes ago. I'm very careful about never keeping people late. If you feel you have to go, I will not be offended at all. I'm going to just share one and a half more things. Okay. In the future, by the way, I usually have today. All my girls are snow tubing, but I have classes. I teach a class at 10:15, so in the future I will, for all of our sakes, end on time. Okay, so let's look very quickly at Rav Kook, if you're able to say. I really won't be offended if you have to be. This is Rav Kook's Sidur. It's taken from his Sidur, and he's looking here at Kol B'Tichim Yetei V'Yechol, right, at the part of the Pesach, where we say anyone who eats, please, I'm nothing about this offends me. It's great to see you. Okay. So this is, I gave it to you in English. It's a Hebrew siddur. I gave it to you in English. So let all who are hungry come and eat. All who are needy come and partake of the Paschal Lamb. I'm actually going to read this so I can take you through it in sections quickly. Okay, as soon as the pressure is off, and he really uses the word lachatz here, as soon as the lachatz, the pressure, it's a Greek Hebrew word actually, is released, the Israelite soul bounces back with renewed vigor. And what is the essence of the Israelite soul? The light of loving kindness, and this is very Rav Kookian. First of all, lights are very Rav Kookian, and chesed also is very Rav Kook. So what he's saying here is the essence of what it means to be a Jew is to be able to manifest chesed, loving kindness. According to our sages, this is one of 3 traits that characterizes the Jewish people, and I'm going to skip to the next paragraph. So immediately upon liberation, we engage in the act most characteristic of us as a people, feeding the hungry. And Fern, right? Yes, this is is what I was gonna say we were gonna come back to. This idea that and part of being a community is understanding that you have your obligation as an individual, as you said, but it can't be separated from your obligation toward other people, right? Feeding the hungry. However, as we said above, when the soul bounces back from oppression, it cannot manifest in a mediocre manner. The renewed Israelite soul is not placated by some ordinary act of kindness. It's not enough for her to attend to the physical needs of others. The Israelite soul must excel in benevolence. In other words, we can't just say, please come and eat, I'm going to give you food. There has to be this overwhelming sense of chesed. That's what it means to be a Jew, for Rav Kook. The act of kindness must extend to the spiritual needs of others as well. It's not sufficient to call out, kol dichtin yeteh v'yechol. This must be followed immediately by kol ditzrich yeteh v'yifsach. In other words, not just let me give you food, but in a sort of an ancient level, right, come share with my Paschal lamb. Rav Kook, who lives in the 20th century, and was not eating of the Paschal lamb either. So you can imagine what this means for him, right? Embrace your fellow Jew, bring him or her in, take care of him, be there for him, enact benevolence, right? If we can't actually give up the Paschal lamb. Love of humanity must not restrict itself to caring for material needs, but must encompass spiritual needs as well. And I will add one last piece, which is that the Rav, Soloveitchik, writing about this, the same part of the Haggadah, says that one of the whole points of the Seder, of Kol Dichtin Yeteh V'yechol, is that a slave is not able to do hachnasa or ching. Once we are similar to Rav Kook, now that we are no longer a slave, we can perform this incredible mitzvah. So why did I add these two? Because it's one thing to talk in general about commandedness, right? What the Ramban says, what Ibn Ezra says, to talk about commandedness associated with the Korban Pesach and Mezuzah and things like that. Some of the 20th century rabbis, Rav Kook, the Rav, a few others, also take this to the level of feeling commanded about the things that we just sort of take for granted. I mean, who doesn't think hachnasat orchim is a good thing? Who doesn't think that feeding the hungry is a good thing? If we could spend all our time doing that, then that would be the best that we could do. But they're associating it, again, with where it's rooted in what it means to become a nation at this moment in Pesach. That, like Ibn Ezra says, we were liberated in order to be this person. That's what we were liberated to do. That's what it means. Not in gratitude for what was done, but we were liberated so we could be the best that we can be. And according to them, what's the best that a Jew could be? Benevolent, chesed, tzedakah, things like that. Great.
Thank you so much.